Well, the absolute flood of news coming out of the NBA continues with the latest report that Kemba Walker is being traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, the specifics of the deal include Boston sending Kemba Walker, the 16th overall pick this year, and a second-round pick in 2025 to Oklahoma City for Al Horford, Moses Brown, and a 2023 second-round pick. So let's just break this down really briefly, really quickly, hopefully. I don't want to do another 10-minute video. Let's try to keep it around 5. Just give you the overall view of everything. Kemba Walker's relationship with Boston was a little bit broken down already. The Celtics had tried to trade him after his first year with the team. And of course, the relationship at that point was a little bit broken. The trust just wasn't there anymore. And even entering this offseason, it was understood that Kemba Walker wanted to go somewhere new, wanted a fresh start somewhere else. He dealt with a lot of injuries in Boston. He underachieved compared to what he was doing in Charlotte. And of course, this past season, Boston underachieved themselves. Brad Stevens moved up to that kind of pseudo GM role, that president of basketball operations role where Danny Ainge retired from. And this is his biggest move, or his first move in that new role. So Walker gets the fresh start that he wanted. It's unlikely he actually stays in Oklahoma City for very long. They'll probably flip him, similar to what they did with Dan Green. Even with Al Horford, where he played 28 games and then sat, and then they traded him this offseason, they might try to do something similar to that with Kemba Walker. This is probably a very short-term move for him. I'm not even sure he suits up for Oklahoma City this year, or I guess this coming season. Other parts of this trade. The reason why they had to include the 16th overall pick to move Kemba Walker is he's an aging point guard. He's got injury. He's got an injury history, especially with his knees this year, which for a guy of his size and his stature who doesn't play great defense, that's a pretty big deal. And Walker has 2 big years left on his contract. He makes about $36 million this coming year, and he has a player option for 2022 where he makes over $37.5 million. So that's a lot of money you have to move here in this trade, which is why the Boston Celtics included the number 16th overall pick. So you don't like that as a draft capital perspective for Boston because they don't have the same number of picks they had for years because of the Brooklyn trade. All those picks are gone now. So Boston has to dip into their remaining war chest to get Kemba Walker out and bring in Al Horford, who could really help them out because Al Horford this past season only played 28 games with Oklahoma City because they were trying to rest him. They mutually agreed he would sit out the rest of the year so that they could have him in prime shape for when they traded him in the offseason, which has worked out fine for him. He goes back to Boston, where he spent 3 years there. He was on the all-defensive team. He was an all-star last time he was there. And he has $27 million due in 2021 and $26.5 million due in 2023. So Boston gets some cap flexibility, which they'll use to probably try to re-sign Evan Fournier, who they traded for during the middle of the season with Orlando. So Boston gets cap flexibility in this move. They get to move on from a player who wasn't happy there. They bring in Al Horford, who can certainly contribute for them as a center or a power forward, because we saw this past year they were not good defensively on the interior. Even though Robert Williams is very good at that role, it just happened that I didn't have the size to match up against bigger teams. So you bring in Al Horford, a very versatile, very experienced player who's been to Eastern Conference Finals before, who's a multi-time All-Star, who's been an all-defensive player in the past. So you bring him back in much cheaper than what Kemba Walker was. You're probably going to be able to re-sign Evan Fournier, and if not, you can at least sign a lot of free agents, because I've been over this before. There's a lot of good free agents on the market this year, and not a lot of guys who will be paid a lot of money. They're not all superstars. There are some really quality players out there you can pay significantly less and still have them contribute and still have them be almost pseudo-stars off the bench. So I think Boston's going to be very happy with this move and the financial space they get for it. Of course, it did cost them the number 16th overall pick. If you're a Celtics fan, you can justify this by saying you used number 16 overall pick on Moses Brown. Moses Brown, I believe, is 2 years into his NBA career. He's 22 years old, and there's some potential there. He's not great defensively yet, but he is 7'2", so he's going to give you the height that Boston didn't have this past year, unless you want to count Taco Fall, who doesn't really play, but Boston didn't have the interior height this past year. And as I said, Moses Brown, 7'2". He's a young guy. He's 20. Actually, he's only 21 years old. I think I said 22, but he'll be 22 this coming season. 21 years old. And he played 43 games this past season for Oklahoma City, averaging about 21.4 minutes per game and over 8 points and 8 rebounds per night. So you have to feel very good about adding this guy to your rotation. Instead, a very young player, a lot to develop with it there, and certainly gives you rim protection with his size. So that's a plus for them, even though he doesn't really offer you much floor spacing on offense. Al Horford can do that, because Al Horford was shooting the 3 ball at his career high rate this past season, even though it was only in 28 games. But he's shown a renewed willingness to be more of an offensive focal point and also shoot the ball from outside more. So you have to feel very comfortable with Al Horford coming in and diversifying this offense and hopefully giving you some veteran defense as well. But again, this trade basically results from Kemba Walker being frustrated with the team, both of them knowing they're going to separate ways, they're going to go different directions this coming season. He gets to go to Oklahoma City, who will probably send him somewhere new, and he gets a fresh start that he wanted. While Oklahoma City continues to just stockpile draft picks, and they have 3 first-rounders this year, 2 first-rounders in 2022, and then maybe up to 4 or up to 5 the next year. So they have a ton of first-round picks coming down the line. This is a great move by Oklahoma City because, again, they get that first-round pick for that long-term rebuild. And this is not necessarily a great move for Boston unless they re-sign Evan Fournier, in which case that really helps out quite a bit. They have to keep a player who was almost just as impactful as Kemba Walker this past year. Even though he didn't play many games for the Celtics, he's going to be on that level. And you also get to bring back Al Horford and get to develop Moses Brown and see what he turns into. So a very interesting and complex first move for Brad Stevens as the president of basketball operations for the Boston Celtics.